Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for September 4th, 2018. On today's episode, we're going to discuss the latest film and TV news. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And writer Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
Okay, guys, usually on Monday we do the Watercooler episode, but Jacob is out sick. Apparently he's not feeling good after having barbecue on Labor Day, and Brad is out today as well. So I'm pushing the Watercooler episode to Wednesday instead of our normal first day of the week, which I guess today is Tuesday, not Monday, as I said earlier. So let's move on to the news. Let's just jump right into it. Over the weekend, we learned that David Cronenberg is going to be doing a TV series. Chris, you're at this up for the site. What do we know?
So there aren't really any specific details, unfortunately. And David Cronenberg has directed TV before, and he was actually asked to direct season 2 of True Detective, and he turned it down because he didn't like the script, which puts him in line with most people who saw True Detective season 2. And but this is the first time he's actually developing a show on his own. And basically, all he said was he was at the Venice Film Festival, and he said, you know, he can't really say what it's about, but it's in the works. And I just found this slightly amusing and ironic because one of David Cronenberg's most famous films is, of course, Videodrome, which is all about people becoming obsessed with TV and TV sending out these very harmful signals that turn people basically insane. So it's kind of like his career has come full circle now, where he's literally just developing a TV show after making this film about the evils of TV. So, like I said, I don't know anything about the show, but I'm a Cronenberg fan, so I'm looking forward to whatever it may be.
I am not a huge Cronenberg fan, but I feel like I would be curious. I would have a curiosity of seeing what a Cronenberg developed TV series is like. Ben, would you tune in?
I think so. I'm still working my way through a lot of his filmography. I've probably only seen like 5 movies of his, and I know he has many, many more than that. But yeah, I mean, the guy who directed The Fly and Videodrome and Eastern Promises, yeah, I'm definitely interested in seeing what he does in that medium.
Also over the weekend, the Los Angeles Online Film Critics Society announced their Summer Movie Awards. I'm part of this group, and we announced basically we did a fun award show just online, awarding the best films and performances of this summer. And Ben, you wrote this up for the site. Tell us who won.
Yeah, so there are 10 categories here, and I'll read you guys the winners. So Best Summer Blockbuster went to Mission Impossible Fallout. Best Summer Actor went to John Cho for Searching. There was a tie for Best Summer Actress between Toni Collette for Hereditary and Constance Wu for Crazy Rich Asians. And Adam Driver took home the Supporting Actor Award for his work in BlacKkKlansman. Awkwafina won for Supporting Actress for Crazy Rich Asians. The Best Summer Sequel, Prequel, or Spinoff also went to Mission Impossible Fallout. The Best Summer Documentary was Won't You Be My Neighbor. The Best Summer Indie was 8th Grade. The Best Summer Director was Spike Lee for BlacKkKlansman, and the Best Summer Screenplay went to Bo Burnham for 8th Grade.
Okay, so I guess the first question here, guys, is who got snubbed?
I can't believe they didn't give Gotti anything. What's up with that?
Did anybody see that movie? I don't know. No, do you think any other movie should have won over Mission Impossible Fallout for Best Summer Blockbuster?
No, it's hard to put anything up against that, because I legitimately think Fallout is like one of the best action movies, or at least mainstream action movies in like the past 10 years. So that was a tough one to beat for sure.
It's funny we launched this with that category and also the Best Summer Sequel, Prequel, or Spinoff. Not knowing when we decided these categories that it was going to be a clean sweep. Mission Impossible. What about actors and actresses? Is there any performances you guys would like to give a shout out to that it didn't get some spotlight here?
I have one in mind, but Chris, I'm interested. Do you have any?
I mean, honestly, I do. I really think Toni Collette's performance in Hereditary is pretty much the best performance like of the year, not just the summer. So I can't really fault that, honestly.
Yeah, I think for Best Supporting Actor, I maybe would have put Rafael Casal in contention. He was one of the leads, or I guess one of the supporting players in Blind Spotting, which came out earlier this summer. Daveed Diggs was probably the traditional lead in that, and I think you could qualify Rafael Casal as a supporting player there.
For sure. I kind of wish Searching had won Summer Indie, but I'm glad Eighth Grade got some love, and Searching, of course, got some love as well as Best Summer Actor with John Cho.
I would also put maybe Sorry to Bother You in there for Summer Indie, or maybe even Summer Director, or Screenplays for that matter. I mean, that movie is just it's so great. So I feel like it could have slid into any of those slots.
Yeah, well, very cool. You can check out the full list of winners on the site. We'll link in show notes. Let's move on to Quentin Tarantino's Star Trek, which I don't believe is ever going to happen, but you know, that won't stop the cast and crew of the Star Trek franchise from hyping it up. Karl Urban has given us some new details. Chris, what do we know?
So Quentin Tarantino's potential R-rated Star Trek movie, like Peter said, we don't know if this will ever happen, but if it does happen, Tarantino actually wants the same cast as the current ongoing Star Trek film franchise to be in his film, even though I don't think it's technically within the current continuity. It's very confusing and strange and interesting. And Karl Urban was at a convention over the weekend, and he provided some insight into it. You know, nothing specific, but he did call Tarantino's idea, whatever it is, quote unquote, bananas. So take from that what you will. And he also weighed in a little bit on the R rating. I won't read his full quote because it's a bit wordy, but he boils down to saying the R rating isn't because Tarantino's script is like filled with obscenities like his other films, but rather because it's R rated to illustrate the horrors of space and the intensity of the situation that the characters find themselves in. So, if this happens, don't expect everyone to be running around dropping F-bombs like in other Tarantino films. Just expect it to be a very intense space action movie. Again, if it happens, which who knows?
I just don't think this is going to happen. Ben, if you were going to put the Vegas odds on us actually getting a Quentin Tarantino Star Trek movie, what would you put it?
I'm not sure exactly how those odds work, but yeah, I would say it's not great. Although this idea does sound really cool, and to me, that's always one of the best parts about any sort of space movie. I mean, that's my favorite aspect of Gravity, for example, is just the sheer horror of being in such a harsh environment. So it sounds like they're onto a cool idea there. I just wish that it was more of a given that we're actually going to see it come to fruition.
One of the podcasts I listen to regularly is screenwriter John August's Script Notes podcast, and we did a story on this I think a couple weeks back, and we never covered it on this podcast, and I thought we'd pull it out of the archive since we are not in a flurry of movie news this week. And basically, John August is wondering why many older movies aren't available online. Ben, what do we know?
Yeah, so he basically was trying to track down one particular film. It was 1984's The Flamingo Kid, only to find that you couldn't find it anywhere on iTunes, Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, any other streaming service. It's just straight up not available. And this is not a new observation. There have been, hundreds of movies that have sort of fallen by the wayside like this. But John August sort of took to his blog and commissioned a crowdsourced document called Missing Movies that has over 390 entries from 1980 until today of movies that are just not available for any sort of rental, purchase, or streaming anywhere. So I've linked to that document in the show notes, and you can find that and see what movies sort of fall on that list. He also put out the call for somebody to do a little bit more like of a systematic approach to this. So one of his listeners took up that challenge and created this blog post that tracked the availability of the top 200 top grossing movies for each year from 1999 until now, and found that across all 4,000 of those movies, about 120 of them cannot be streamed, rented, or purchased digitally. So John August is trying to figure out a solution to this, and he said part of what he can try to do himself is maybe have conversations with people who are members of the Academy to try to convince them that this whole thing falls under the category of film preservation, which the Academy is, that's near and dear to their heart. But he also says that it's important for fans, consumers, to reach out and make noise about wanting to see these movies get digital releases. So like people like James Cameron and Ron Howard, he says, are obvious choices, obvious candidates to reach out to, because a lot of their films are available on streaming, and maybe they have the clout to actually, talk a studio into going through the efforts of digitizing some of their older releases and putting them online somewhere.
And of course, there's other movies beyond like big releases that will never see the light of day. Films produced independently or not by a major studio. Last night I went to this thing that's held every Labor Day in California called the 5 Minutes Game, and I'm going to talk about this on the podcast, on the Watercooler edition of the podcast. So I'm not going to spoil it here, but basically what they do is they show you the first 5 minutes from 15 films that are not available on DVD, Blu-ray, or a streaming, basically stuff that's only been available on VHS. And the whole collective crowd votes on which movie they want to see after seeing the first 5 minutes.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'll talk about that tomorrow on the Watercooler to give you a little bit of a tease. Let's move on to Rian Johnson, who apparently is not directing a Star Wars film next, but directing something else, a little smaller movie instead. Chris, tell us about it.
So Rian Johnson's first post-Last Jedi film is going to be a movie called Knives Out, starring Daniel Craig, and it's described as a contemporary mystery in the vein of Agatha Christie's Locked Room mysteries. And Locked Room mysteries are stuff like sort of like Murder on the Orient Express, and Then There Were None, where a crime is committed in a single location, and it's almost impossible to figure out how the killer got in and got out undetected. And this is very cool because Rian Johnson, of course, got his start with Brick, which is a mystery film, and I love the idea of him going back to a smaller film in between Star Wars movies. And I also love the fact that he's working with Daniel Craig, who I think is a very good actor with a lot of range, who doesn't really get to use it that much because he's been more or less locked up in the James Bond franchise for the last 12 years. But he was recently in Steven Soderbergh's Logan Lucky, which I thought that film was okay, but I thought he was great in it because he showed a lot of comedic range that he doesn't usually get to use that much. So all of this sounds really cool, and it's going to start shooting in November, and then when this is done, then Rian Johnson's going to move on to his untitled Star Wars trilogy.
What does this mean for Daniel Craig in the next Bond movie?
Well, the only reason this could actually happen right now is because the Bond movie is on hold. That was supposed to start shooting soon, but then Danny Boyle, the director, walked away. And as a result of that, it was like a perfect storm, and it enabled Daniel Craig to sign on to this film while producers trying to figure out just what the hell to do with Bond 25. So while Daniel Craig is basically waiting for that movie to start up, he's going to shoot this film, which I imagine won't be a long, lengthy shoot the way a James Bond movie would be.
I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about how Rian Johnson his films, for the most part, have been almost in the same way as like Quentin Tarantino kind of emulates these movie genres he loves. I feel like Rian Johnson's films are kind of inspired by these kind of book genres that he loves, like Brick and Brothers Bloom, and now this movie. Ben, do you have any thoughts on this?
I cannot wait to see this movie. And yeah, I think you're totally right. He clearly loves all of these genres, and he is basically just going, checking down the boxes of creating like his perfect entry of a time travel movie or a con man film and a a sort of closed door murder mystery like this sounds so awesome, and I cannot wait to see what he does with it.
Yeah, and I'm so glad. When I interviewed him for Last Jedi, I even asked him back then, I was like, please tell me that I love the fact that you're doing more Star Wars movies, but please tell me you're going to be doing, some more original movies. And back then he was like, yeah, of course. So I'm glad that we're not going to have to wait until the end of, his Star Wars trilogy to see more.
And he's such a sharp writer too. I feel like he doesn't get enough credit as a writer. I mean, I know that obviously his films are very acclaimed within like the indie community and cinephiles and stuff. But I feel like a lot of that. Oh, go ahead.
And Hollywood. I mean, it's little known, and I'm not going to name the names of films, but he, while he was not able to, get his big Hollywood movies made, he was kind of a script doctor on a lot of films and touching up dialogue and adding his cleverness to big Hollywood films. Yeah,
I had never heard that. That's awesome. Yeah, I was just going to say, I feel like his directing takes. It gets a lot of the praise, but I feel like he's such a smart writer as well. So I can't wait to see what he does with a really tightly knit story like this.
Me as well. Let's move on to the next Die Hard movie, which we thought was going to be Die Hard Year One and wasn't going to have Bruce Willis involved. Apparently, that is also Die Hard 6 and has a different title. Chris, explain this for us.
Yes. So let me just preface this by saying this is a terrible idea, but they're going to do it anyway. So Die Hard 6, the next entry in the Die Hard franchise. We had known for a while now it was going to be both sort of a sequel and a prequel where, it focuses on John McClane in his 60s. John McClane in his 60s, as played by Bruce Willis, and also it was going to show John McClane just starting out on the Force, and it was probably going to be inspired by the comic book series Die Hard Year One. And so that is still sort of happening, but now we know the movie is officially called McClane, and rumors speculated that the movie would be more prequel than sequel, and it would have, Bruce Willis in just a few cameo-like scenes, and the bulk of the movie would have some new actor playing John McClane in his 20s. But according to producer Lorenzo Di Bonaventura, that's not true. It's going to somehow balance it out equally to have an equal amount of Bruce Willis and whomever is playing John McClane as in his 20s. I don't really know how they're going to do that, and they haven't even announced who's playing the young McClane yet, but that's where it stands right now, where that's how they're planning it out. And again, this is a awful idea because we don't really need to see John McClane in his 20s. What makes the original Die Hard so special is that John McClane is being thrust into this crazy situation for like the first time in his life. He's literally a fish out of water. He's not in his element. He's never had to deal with anything like this before. And to jump back in time and show him in his 20s on another action adventure, it kind of like robs the original Die Hard of what made it so special. But I'm sure someone out there is furious I'm saying this, and they're going to write an angry letter in telling me I'm an asshole. But that's where I stand.
Okay, well, why don't I do what I do often and play devil's advocate here, Chris? Maybe the idea of bringing Bruce Willis in as, current day John McClane is a way of sidestepping this issue that you accurately explain. John McClane, I keep on wanting to say McCain now. John McClane, obviously didn't get into any big trouble before that first Die Hard, and that is a problem that you have to address. So why not maybe have this have to do with some criminal he, captured in his early days that wasn't like a big deal, but you keep on going back and forth between current day with him having to deal with it on a bigger scale.
Oh my God, Peter! I'm just imagining the young McClane just as like a parking enforcer, and he just gives somebody a parking ticket, and that guy becomes a supervillain and holds a grudge for 40 years, and finally comes back, and that's all that young McClane does is just walks this neighborhood beat, and that's it. I would kind of love that actually.
Yeah, I'm not saying I want to see that movie, but I'm just saying maybe there's an angle here. We don't know. I mean, maybe we could be prematurely judging this. I don't know, guys. Maybe they should just make McCain, and it's about John McCain. Okay, let's move on. We have a bunch of early buzz coming out of the Telluride and Venice film festivals. We reported last week on a couple of those movies, and right now we're going to give you the early reactions for Jason Reitman's new movie, The Front Runner and Suspiria. So let's start off with the Jason Reitman movie, The Front Runner. Ben, what are people saying?
Yeah, so The Front Runner stars Hugh Jackman as Gary Hart. It's a true story, and Gary Hart was was sort of poised to become the Democratic nominee for president in 1988, and then a scandal happened where he had an affair with an actress and a model, and basically the press coverage sort of became so overwhelming that he ended up having to drop out of the race. So that's what this movie is basically about, is that political time period. And Jason Reitman, who has made movies like Labor Day and Juno and a bunch of others, is returning to the camera here, behind the camera here. And according to some of the early reactions, The Front Runner is a pretty good movie. So Scott Menzel says, The Front Runner was my most anticipated film of the Telluride Film Festival. Hugh Jackman's performance is phenomenal, and it's unlike anything you've seen him do before. The film itself is very timely and important. It's a must-see. And let's see, Chris Tapley at Variety says, at times The Front Runner feels almost Altman-esque. Great use of old school photography and dialogue mixing, intriguing evolution for Reitman. And that Altman-esque comment, excuse me, is sort of something that permeates a lot of these reactions. A lot of these films or these reactions compare The Front Runner to the films of Robert Altman. Alicia Malone says that Reitman is channeling Robert Altman with long shots and overlapping dialogue, multiple characters, and the way it throws you in makes it feel immediate. Hugh Jackman does a great job. I knew nothing of the real story and was engaged. So, yeah, there you have it.
I love the films of Robert Altman. I feel like, he was like a huge influence on Paul Thomas Anderson's early work, especially like a film like Magnolia or Boogie Nights. And I feel like I'm all in to see that from Jason Reitman. Chris, do you have any thoughts? Are you excited?
I'm planning to see this at TIFF, so I am looking forward to seeing it. But the trailer looked a little too like by the numbers for me, so I'm a little concerned that it's going to be a bit too like biopic-y and predictable, but I am looking forward to seeing it.
Let's move on to Suspiria. This is a horror film that we've all been looking forward to. Chris, is it good?
Well, the reactions are more or less what I was expecting, where I have a feeling this is going to be this year's Mother, where some people love it and other people want to burn every copy of it from existence. So the reviews out of Venice pretty much confirm that, with some people praising it a lot. Like Variety's review says, Suspiria is that rarity, an extreme horror movie made by a deeply serious maestro of a director. And then Time, however, calls it bland, grisly, boring, and silly. And Screen Daily says a sensuous experience designed to provoke, whereas RogerEbert.com says, this is a pretty good quote, I'm racking my brain to find another example of an instance in which a director used his complete artistic freedom for the purpose of flaunting his absolute lack of artistic conviction. So there you have it. You're either going to think this is a gorgeous, brilliant, amazing artistic horror movie, or you're going to think this is absolute trash.
By the way, I love critic quotes like that, because that makes me want to see the movie even more.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I was already excited to see this, but the negative reviews have me even more excited to see it than the positive reviews, because they're so dramatically negative to the point where you can tell people are just seething with rage at this movie. And I don't know, that's the type of movie I have to see. So I was already looking forward to this, but now I'm looking forward to it even more.
You know, I saw a clip from this at CinemaCon, and I knew right then when I was watching, you know, what I was seeing on the big screen. And people, by the way, this was during a luncheon while people were eating, and there was like disgusting things happening on the screen. People were like spitting up their food. It was I just knew right then. I was like, people are not going to like this movie. Like the general public, I like this might have the potential of critics and, you know, film Twitter and film nerds loving this movie, but I don't know. I just have a feeling the general public is not gonna be digging this movie. Ben, are you excited for this movie? Do these reactions make you less excited?
I mean, I'm very on the fence about this. I'm curious from like an intellectual standpoint, but I feel like from what I've seen so far that I'm just not going to like it, and that's not going to stop me from seeing it. But I'm just I'm nervous because it feels like this is becoming one of those movies where it's like a film Twitter line in the sand kind of thing. Like, where do you fall on Suspiria? You know, like it's like a character defining thing of like how you react to this movie, and I fear this is going to be like a Phantom Thread situation where a majority of the cinephiles that I know love the movie and I just didn't connect with it in the same way. But I am looking forward to seeing it because I loved Mother, so maybe this one will sort of turn out the same way for me.
Hopefully so. That brings us to the end of today's Slash Film Daily. Ben, where can people find more of your work online?
You can find me writing at slashfilm.com. You can find me on Twitter at Ben Pearson.
Chris, where can people find more of your work online?
I'm also at slashfilm.com, and I'm on Twitter at Evangelista413.
You can find me at Slashfilm on all social media. You can find this podcast published every weekday on slashfilm.com and all the popular podcast apps, including iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify. All the stories we mentioned today you can find in the show notes and on slashfilm.com. Please, as always, send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to Peter at slashfilm.com and leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention the email on the air. Please also go to iTunes, give us a rating, write us a review, and spread the word. Tell your friends, and we'll see you tomorrow. I don't know. I kept on, like, when I was filling out this ballot for this Summer Movie Awards winners, I was like, there must be some, like, better performances, and I was just finding it hard to find, to come up with, like, great performances of the summer.
I agree with Chris that Toni Collette is like the standout one of the whole year. And you saying I'm going to ask you, I went and looked through all of the movies that I saw, and like, I want to put like Tessa Thompson from Sorry to Bother You on there, but that performance is not like that great, so I feel like it's not.
See, I voted for that performance, but like that's all.
Yeah, I like the movie more than, and maybe like Lakeith Stanfield as a lead or something, but I also really like John Cho in Searching because I feel like he holds a lot of the weight of that movie on his shoulders. So yeah, I don't know, it's a tough one.
Chris, did you see Searching?
I have not seen that yet. No, I want to. I just have not seen it. Yeah. I'll get around to it. There's a lot of stuff I haven't seen. Sorry to Bother You yet. There's a lot of stuff I missed. I'm waiting for, because we're about to enter that, the screener season where they send award season screeners home. Yeah. So I'm probably just wait for that on everything.
Yeah, I feel like my big one that I haven't seen is Black Klansman.